one thing Xavier is known for is producing the best. It's like an automatic for us to go to the top of whatever we're doing. We're going to actually be excellent at it, and we're going to be recognized for that.
From the Office of Institutional Advancement and Alumni Relations, it's Xavier Gold Live, the podcast, bringing you stories of leadership, impact, and the Xavier spirit. What's new, XU? I'm Tashia Hogue.
And I'm Jalen Jones. We're both student journalists from Xavier's Mass Communications Department and are excited to bring you a podcast where we connect with our Xavier community through conversation.
In each episode, we bring you intimate interviews with standout alumni who will give us a glimpse into their unique Xavier experience. Today, we have the pleasure of connecting with Miss Chantel Shackleford, a Chicago native who is a remarkable pillar in the healthcare industry and a dedicated advocate for youth community empowerment.
With over 20 years of experience, Shackleford is not just a veteran in her field, she's a trailblazer. Currently serving as the manager of regulatory affairs at AbbVie Biopharmaceuticals, Shackleford ensures that medical products are both safe and effective. She also makes sure the university remains true to its mission in her position as a member of Xavier's Board of Trustees.
But those aren't all the leadership hats she owns in her closet. Ms. Chantel is president of both Xavier's National Alumni Association and the Alumni Association of the Chicago Xavier chapter, where leadership and dedication to the community intersect. Let's welcome Ms. Chantel Shackleford to the Xavier Gold Live podcast.
This is awesome. Thank you, guys. I'm feeling special. Do I need to do autographs after this?
You may have to.
Thank you for having me, and thank you guys for doing this. This is awesome. I love it.
Of course, it's great to have you. To start off, with over 2 decades of experience within the field of healthcare, could you give us a glimpse into how you navigated the transition from quality assurance, maintaining requirements while implementing processes and procedures to managing the demanding healthcare global market?
One of the things how I navigated through that was, number one, I had to get some allies. I had to get some people that were going to be in my corner, and they were going to tell me the good, bad, and the ugly about myself. And they were going to help me navigate through the streams of transition and how to be effective. You know, you can have skill sets to do something, but that's not the only thing that they're looking for, right? To really make you to have the most impact. So I was able to, number one, get the allies, the people that was on my side, people that was my sponsors that was speaking rooms for me when I wasn't invited to the room yet. And I was able to take advantage of development, any professional development that the company offered. I would take leadership skills classes. I would do things about how to negotiate, right? Without even being a people leader. I mean, people don't know because I work at AbbVie right now, but it was at one time Abbott Laboratories, and we became 2 companies, and I went with the new company in 2013. Before I even became a leader over people, I would go over to HR, right? And I would ask them questions like, are you guys recruiting at HBCU schools? Because I would see the candidates that would come in. I just went over there, I made friends, and then at that point, I was able to do that connection, right? And be able to get some payback, and pay it forward. And those are skill sets I was developing before I even became a manager over people. How to look at skills, how to say, you know what, we looking for somebody with a degree in chemistry with maybe 3 to 5 years to come into the lab. But you know what? I'm looking at that extracurriculum activity at school. For us, let's say SGA. They was on the SGA, maybe they was Miss Xavier, or there's a part of sorority or fraternity. That helped me in my navigation process.
We don't really often see too many people of color in such executive roles like the one that you have. And as Xavierites were taught early that we're to contribute to promoting a more just and inclusive society. And I know you've done that in your work environment. So how has the representation for you specifically being a Black woman empowered you to wake up every day and show up for your company?
You know what has really empowered me is I look at 2 things. Someone paid the price before me, and I need to pay the price for people behind me. And I'm not just doing well for myself, but when I'm able to do well, then I'm able to open doors for other people. So it's not just about me. And so that kept me going. That made me to strive even higher and put in the work because I knew, Chantel, you just not here for yourself, right? It's good to get promotions and the accolades. You do a good job. You want to get compensated, right? That's a no-brainer. But it's not just about that. Who's going to take my place when I move on? How many people are going to be able to come in after I transition to another role? So as a Black woman, and majority of the spaces and places that I've been in, sometimes I've been the only Black. And being in the sciences, in the science field and pharmaceuticals, sometimes not only I'm the only Black, sometimes I'm the only woman sitting at the table. And I've been in roles in quality where I was the final decision maker. And so when you were making the final choice whether something was going out the door or not, if a product was going to get released, sometimes that was a challenge, right? Because you have to balance out. Even young in my career, I had to really, really make sure I knew, Chantel, who are you? Your own personal person and character and confidence, and be able to go into rooms where I didn't have people that look like me, and to be confident, to stand on what I know, and to know that who I am, and to be able to go in there and make those decisions without breaking a sweat. It wasn't easy at first, because that's my first corporate job. But I had to begin to, as I navigated through, I said, you know what? I'm not going to be intimidated by any man. And I'm going to do what I was called and assigned to do. And so that's how I was able to do that.
Beautiful. Could you give us a pivotal moment or the influence that thrust you into leaning into that purpose?
A pivotal moment for me is early in my career. I had a manager, and I'll never forget him today. His name is Jeff Malarski. And although he's not with the parent company anymore, I remember, because I was seeing things that I was like I wasn't agreeing with, but I was immature about it. And instead of being solution focused, I was more in the blame mode. And I'll never forget, he listened to me, and then he did that slam on the desk with his hand. And he said, what are you going to do about it? He challenged me. He said, what are you going to do about A, B, and C, Chantel? Okay, that might be true, but what are you going to do about it for yourself? And that happened. I've been at 20, I just celebrated my 25th year. That happened like within the first 2 years of my career. And I still remember it to this day, and he reached out to me via LinkedIn. He was like, I miss seeing you, right? And that was just a couple of years ago. So that was a pivotal point for me when I took accountability for Chantel. Obstacles will always be in life, right? We're always going to have obstacles. But how am I going to take accountability for me? And even taking those bad situations and make it turn around to work good for me.
You have this powerful creed that says, build the people and the rest will follow. We would like to know, how do you apply this philosophy to both your daily work and community involvement?
This is something that God gave me. When I first became a people leader, I was so focused on getting the job done because other role I had with releasing product out into the market. I had long meetings. A lot of people came to see me. I had to look at all conformance and compliance issues and get called FDA or another healthcare inspector was on site. Those are the things that I was trying to particularly do. And what happened was I wasn't taking care of the people. I would come in, I would go to my office, close, shut them off from me, do my work, and then go home late. And I'm thinking I'm doing a good job, right? And at that point, I was failing as a people leader. I was so failing. Do you guys believe that? I was failing tremendously. I had so much issues going on in the area. They was calling HR on me and everything. And I was like, whoa, what's the problem? And I had to really take a step back. And I'm going to tell you something. God spoke to me and he told me this, and I follow it to this day. He said, make the people first and everything else will come into play. And I was like, well, God, you know what? They at home with their family. I'm still here 7, 8 o'clock at night trying to review stuff. He was like, no, you go around this office, you say hi to everybody. You put your stuff down. You go speak to everybody. You know what they like. You know she loved her 2 little girls, and you know they're into Girl Scout. Go over there and buy some cookies. Go over there and sit down and talk to them 15, 20 minutes, And when I started to do that, I'm telling you, God flipped that around because the people knew that I sincerely cared about them. And that doesn't mean you get along and you guys are in agreement all the time. But I learned that put the people first, make sure their needs are being met, make sure that they have the right development if they want to be developed, because there are people who don't want to be developed. They don't, right? It is what it is. You let them just, okay, you just do you. You produce it for me. And those are people who want to take the chance. They want to grow. You have to work with people where they are at if they want to be worked with. But those that do not want to be bothered, you just let them, okay, you sit there. That's just a decision. But that's what I learned. And I apply that in my day-to-day space, where in my office, in my job, and I apply that in every organization I've tried to work with. I'm from Chicago. I've been the president of Chicago since 2016. And number one, I'm going to pray. I'm going to ask God and get a strategy and ask him, how do I do this? You can have all the skill sets you want, but if you don't know how to handle people and you don't know how to work with people, I've seen it. I've seen the most brilliant people not progress, because they just wasn't a fit. You have to make people first. And again, you're going to have all type of people, and you have to learn to navigate through those personalities. But don't put yourself above the people. Anytime you have a leader that sacrifices the people for their own personal gain, that's not a true leader.
Speaking of just many of the organizations you have benefited, we also noticed you were a key factor in establishing the Frederick J. Carter Scholarship. Could you give us a deeper insight on how this accomplishment came to exist?
Mr. Carter he's from Mississippi, but he came here, Chicago. He was a past NAA president, and he was the Chicago president. So he was one of the ones instrumental bringing me into the Alumni Association. And him and his, unfortunately, Mr. Carter passed in 2019. But when I took over in 2016 as the president, I'm going to tell you, God, that's one of the first things God gave me. He said, create a scholarship in his honor, because he was a person who had a heart of gold. He was a leader that definitely put the people first. He mentored so many of us, right? And he's so instrumental in the city of Chicago of things that have happened that still stand today historically. And so I put it to the general body. We voted on it. It was unanimous. Hands down. That wasn't even a minute vote, right? 30 seconds. Oh, yeah. Come. Yes, yes, yes. And so I never forget when he came into the meeting, he came in late, him and his wife. And I told him, I said, I have to tell you, we've established a scholarship in your honor. And he was just floored. And so I'm so glad that we did that thing, because I didn't know in 2019 that we would lose him.
And also, shout out Mr. Carter, Mississippi, fellow Mississippian right here. But yeah, after digging into your daily profession and the significant influence you make in the health community and with the organizations you associate yourself with, we'd love for you to take a blast from the past and relive your XU experience.
Okay, XU.
So it's the year of 1986, and you were just introduced to that St. Catherine Drexel, as we know it, KD rite of passage, where the communal bathrooms forged sisterly acts of passing tissue under the stall, creating bonds. Can you speak on those bonds and relationships that Xavier gave you?
So let me tell you something, and this is something that when I'm recruiting, I tell the students, I tell people, is that Xavier gave me bonds and relationships that are still very close to this day. And I met people from all over where we are still close today. Like my roommate, one of my roommates from college, our families are, we really go around and say we sisters and brothers because we're still that close. And those relationships are authentic. You can't make this up. And wherever someone, we celebrate each other's success. And when we're going through some trying time, we're going to be there for each other. That means we have to get on a plane and fly to where you're at, always making that phone call, text message or whatever. But the relationships I receive at Xavier, and that some I'm still building. I'm still building relationships because I still have met people that came after me and before me, right? And you meet those bonds, you celebrate each other, and it doesn't matter. If you haven't seen each other in a couple of years, you know how we act. See each other in the airport or something. We're going to act the fool up in there. I'm just saying. Those are relationships that's going to take you through the good times and the bad times. And that's one thing that I think we're consistent as alum. Those relationships, they're going to be in your wedding. They're going to be there for your kids' graduation. They're going to be there to celebrate you in different times. And again, when you're having some challenging times, people might lose loved ones and things, they're going to be there for you. So I hope you guys are building bonds like that as well.
And those bonds I could definitely attest to. Now, with you coming from the best city in the world, Chicago, were there any initial challenges that you faced? Because I know for me, personally, it was a culture shock or the language barriers. But what was that initial interaction for you coming on campus and just being immersed into the community?
So let me tell you, I had never visited Xavier, right? I made a decision based upon what my mom, her recommendation, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go. When I went there, I was like, no, this not like this not like the big schools. What? I was like, oh no, I'm not gonna make it. And it was a transition for me because not only it's a difference between the North and the South, and look, we got family members in the South, but to live there, it was a shock to me. Chicago at that time, remember I graduated in 90, so I was there in the second half of the 80s. We had McDonald's at that time that would stay open late. The McDonald's there was closing at 10. I know it's not like that now. I was like, what is going on up in here? We in Chicago, we walking downtown. We just trying to get to our mission. You walk there, hey, how you doing? Want to make groceries and stuff? And I was like, oh, make groceries? What you talking about? And so it was that culture shock too to New Orleans in general. So I was really struggling. I was having fun. But when it came reality, like I'm away from home. This is such a shock to me, the culture here. And to me, at that time, it appeared that students that were coming from those southern areas, maybe sometimes they had that initiation with Xavier and building a relationship that maybe some of us did not have. So they already came in with those relationships. We're coming in from the North, from Chicago, and then we had some of that stereotype. You come from the North, right? You come from Chicago. Well, you know what they're going to think of. And some people might have lived up to that stereotype. But it was just like trying to make it work. My second year was the hardest. I was going to transfer and come back home to Loyola, but I didn't, and I'm glad I didn't. And after that, it just took off. Because one thing, I moved off campus. It helped me a lot. But then after that, it came much easier, the transition for me.
Speaking of home, could you give us one staff or faculty member that made you feel like you were at home at Xavier?
Well, I could tell you, I did work study with her, Sharita Montague, but I think she's gotten remarried now. Her name is different. She was like almost like that mother figure for me, or that big sister type. And she looked out for me. I started working with her my freshman year in work study, and she took me till I graduated. And then I had my organic teacher who I love, Dr. Xavier. He was very instrumental in my life, and Dr. Mace, our Spanish teacher. So those are some of the faculty and staff that I could say really helped me with my transition in Xavier.
Also, what were some underrated resources on campus that you think many students don't know about or didn't know about?
I think some of the students didn't know about some of the academic help, right? When we might fall behind, how you can really go and utilize your professors. Make sure you was getting the right tutoring. And then I think also maybe like when you're having issues emotionally, mentally, where are some of those, those resources that you could reach out and say, hey, I'm just not doing well right now mentally, to be able to make those particular connections. I don't think during my time, I don't think that was really widespread language that we were talking about. And so I would say that would probably be what I would say that was really not utilized.
I agree, because even today there's a stigma to, okay, I'm going to just study. I'm going to try my same studying habit and see if I improve, instead of actually like utilizing the resources that we're paying for. And especially with mental health, we have our wellness center, and we also have a multitude of tutoring centers on campus, throughout the campus. So
I see that now. And that's some of the things, especially when we hit that pandemic. I talked to Mr. Wright a lot, because this is what the students were saying. They were really struggling with being isolated, virtual, trying to really navigate through that. And I think the school did a very good job with availing resources in the midst of struggling themselves, because all of us was impacted by the pandemic.
Yes, we've discussed peers you met, influential staff members, and faculty, but could you give us a core XU memory you cannot escape, or a prime Xavier moment you find yourself revisiting?
Let's see about the funny one. Let me tell you what, we used to have a bird. Now, let me see, probably right where the chapel is right now, that was where our student center was, right? And there was a bird that was that would chase us when we fly. And you know where I'm going. It was hilarious. And it was hilarious. We had one of the staff members was the older gentleman, and it was the way he was swinging at the bird and stuff and trying to run. It was hilarious. I think that is one of the moments I can think of that we always go back and we talk about. And there are so many moments at Xavier. My graduation, the actual date where we were at, it started raining very badly and it started to flood the place out. They had to cancel it. People had to evacuate. We didn't even get a chance to come out, and they had to pick another day. And so, everybody's parents and family couldn't stay down there. I think we ended up graduating like that Monday or something instead of that Saturday. So that's something, that we remember, because it was flooding, and we had all the people that came down for my graduation. Some of them had to go home from that perspective. But those are some of the things that I remember, like the spring festivals and things like that. I'm not going to say some other because I want to make sure you guys stay focused. Don't do what I did my first year. I was totally social. That's all I'm going to say. Criminate
History
myself.
repeats itself. What can I say? But how did being surrounded, by Black excellence pour into you personally?
That is the energy getter right there, and it still stands true today, is that when you're around people, your Black colleagues, your classmates, and we're Black, and we're the top of our game. And one thing Xavier is known for is producing the best. Now, we might didn't come in the best. We was like diamond in the rough. But it's like an automatic for us to go to the top of whatever we're doing. We're going to actually be excellent at it, and we're going to be recognized for that. So when I even come around now, I come to homecoming or the different meetings, even when we have like our send-offs with our students, and I see these students, right? And I see them when they're coming in, and then when I watch them walk across that stage and go into their particular fields, it's like you reliving the moment of the victory all over again. And when I see my fellow Xavierites in the news, when I see them on social media doing their things and being recognized, it's like, yes, because that's my family right there. So it really, really, when you're talking about Xavier, I just beam up, right? And sharing the story about Xavier, because I know from coming into Xavier as a student and where I'm at now, the impact that Xavier has had, not just while I was there as a student, but the impact is making now because of the relationships I have with various alums.
Yes, and Xavier is, I would say, known for just making sure their students are well-rounded, both personally and professionally. So how do you think Xavier has impacted your work ethic professionally and you personally?
Think about the foundation is service. As long as you're a student at Xavier, you're going to serve somewhere. You're going to do a project in the community. You're going to do that. That's something that's just built into us. And so that is what I even carry out throughout my daily life, is serving our patients. And then I serve the community and what our youth, and being able to impact the arena of education and healthcare. So that's something that at Xavier that we do. When I left Xavier, not like I wasn't doing it before in the community, because I'm the product of a community coming together to make sure I was successful. But that's one thing I could think about with Xavier. That is something that we all experience as students, is that service portion.
How more often do you share these lessons learned? And with organizations like I Have a Dream Foundation, Kids Off the Block, and Chicago Scholars, how do you apply those lessons to those organizations?
I go and say, hey, do anybody want to go to Xavier? Your students? But one of the things is how I share those is through service, and service in the excellence way, and making sure that I'm taking what I know and my influence and impacting those organizations. And most of those organizations that you just mentioned there all tie into young people. And not all of them go to HBCU schools. And that's not, what I'm here, to say you have to go to HBCU. I love that if you do go, and I love if you go to Xavier, but to be able to make pathways for them in their journey and to help them in their career path. Like, for instance, with AbbVie, I approached one of my good friends. She told me about AbbVie was working with FAMU and Howard. And she said, you probably need to talk to them about Xavier. And I found the person, and I went to go have a conversation with her. And she's a HBCU graduate, double. And I just was telling the case, and I told the story about Xavier. And her being an HBCU family, she knows about Xavier as well. But when you tell, because I'm a product of Xavier. And I said, I want Xavier to be number 3 on the list of us building these partnerships with. And so she came back, and then a couple months or whatever later, she said, Chantel, I've been given a go ahead. Let's start building this partnership with Xavier. So the fact that when I see some of these students that have been hired at the company, either in an internship or if they've become full-time employees, I think about my friend telling me, who was an HBCU graduate, to go talk to this person. I did. It happened, and look at the results of it. So I'm going to tell the story about Xavier.
Yes, and one thing about us Xavierites, we're going to speak our brother or sister's name up in that room, especially if we know that they meet those qualifications to get that job done. You said it best. Xavier produces excellence. So,
Yeah.
in your own words, what does it mean to you to be a Xavierite?
What it means for me to be a Xavierite means that I'm unique. I've been called for a peculiar purpose because ordinary people don't get called to Xavier. That's why Xavier's not for everybody. And because we had the person that founded Xavier, she took her wealth to build Xavier, to create Xavier for Blacks and Native Americans. And there's a uniqueness about those of us who go to Xavier. It would be hard to find someone who is not excelling in whatever they're doing at Xavier. So when it says for me to be a Xavierite, that means I'm unique. I know I'm called to go to the top, but go to the top for a reason, because I need to open up the doors for others. It means servant, to be a servant, and to serve, not to be seen, right? You serve for impact, because you want to change the lives of others. And you know, we getting ready to celebrate 100 years next year. But we got to make sure the next 100 years are more impactful than the first 100 years. And so things have changed. Times have changed. We're in a different market. When you say Xavier, you're going to remember the things that happened to you and for you as Xavier to help you to succeed to where you're going.
When we talk about the past, the present of Xavier, and when we discuss the next century of Xavier, we just want to know, what are your hopes for its future as it continues to press forward and fear nothing in this next century?
One of my hopes is, again, that we continue to grow and expand, right? Let's just take over that whole area and build, making sure we have plenty of housing, that we don't have to rent from others, making sure that we are partnering with organizations and companies, foundations that believe in us, that's going to afford us the opportunity to go into research, to go into pathways to medicine, to find cures for cancer, to educate our people in public health, to be able to use those to dominate the media space, because the media space tells the story. Let's plummet that area so we can tell the story about Xavier. Those that will dominate in the political arena so they can legislate laws that's going to protect our university and give us access to resources that's going to enable us to bring in the standardized like R&D equipment for even in the arts and in the media, have the right, I'm not a media type of person, but I want the best for us, for those that are going into media, to be able to have a very philanthropic environment, have programs that are going to be top when it comes to business owner. Start now creating your business, right? So those are things I see for Xavier. We announced the medical school, which is awesome. Now that we're going to have the other part of training physicians that's going to be able to impact areas of greatest need. So again, my vision for Xavier, for the alumni, that we realize that we pay it forward and bring our time, bring our talent, bring our treasure that's going to keep our ties to the university. And everybody can do something at various capacities. But let's all come together and make this like a family reunion meal. You go to family reunion. Somebody make the right person got to make potato salad. Okay, did you make those greens over there? I don't have me to make something. I'm just going to bring the water. But I'm going to bring the water. You're not going to be thirsty. But that's what I want. I want us as an alumni association to say, what can we do to amplify that? But then also to build a stronger network for the alums, that we're impacting each other. So that means that when you graduate next year and when you graduate in 2027, that we already have a pipeline to get you into places. You want to be an attorney? Well, we have people sitting in admissions offices for these law schools that's going to help you from day one. You automatically getting into those places. And so that's what I see us being stronger as an alumni association, and Xavier becoming even a greater powerhouse in the realm of education.
Could not agree more.
Well, we know how you stay connected to the Xavier community since graduating with your role as president of the National Alumni Association, as well as the president of the Chicago's Alumni chapter. But how would you encourage others to do the same?
If you're in the area, you can look on the website and listed on the National Alumni Association page. We have all the chapters. Who are the contacts? If you're in that area, contact that leader, that president, and get involved. Ask what's going on in that area. There's plenty of college recruitment. They have meet and greet. Just some family fun times. Sometimes we're playing softball with the other HBCU schools, trying to win a trophy, bowling. There's various activities you can do. And then if you're in an area that does not have a chapter, you can reach out to me or you can send us an email to the NAA email address and we'll get back to you. We'll connect you. We have committees that's on the National Alumni Association and the Board of Governors where we can get you tied in to get you active, to get you engaged. Again, it's not just all about the money, but your time, your expertise can outweigh your gift financially. But we need your gift.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. But, Jalen, do you think it's about that time? I think it's about that time.
I think it is about that time. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to rush our gold guests into answering some rapid fire questions in this next section of our podcast called the Live 5. We'll ask you 5 questions we think our gold community will love to know. When you're ready to go, let me know.
Okay. I'm ready.
All right.
Hope I'm ready.
Number 1, popular trend during your time at Xavier.
All-night parties.
Favorite extracurricular activity.
At Xavier, basketball games.
Best off-campus hangout spot.
Jazz Fest.
Describe your style during undergrad.
Khaki tan pants and the penny loafers. That's what we was on.
Last one. Give me 3 words that describe your leadership style.
People focused, results oriented, and visionary.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up our section of the podcast called The Live 5.
Miss Chantel Shackleford, it was again a pleasure connecting with you through conversation. How can our growing GOLD community connect with you online?
Well, I am on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook, and I do have my IG account. And so you're able to connect with me there.
Well, that concludes our podcast. Again, thank you so much for participating.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Xavier Gold Live podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's show. Now, XU, you know what to do. Join our growing GOLD community on the first Tuesday of every month.
This podcast is available to listen to wherever you listen to your podcast. Do us a favor by subscribing, rating, and reviewing the show today. Make sure to also follow us on social media and subscribe to our monthly newsletter.
This is Xavier Gold Live, the podcast where Xavier's legacy comes to life.